Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the fourth and final edition of the Vox Cybersecurity Podcast. We chatted about cybersecurity, we've chatted about QWERTY, we've chatted about Nimbus, but my guest today is taking us through the full spectrum, and he's someone who needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it nonetheless. Mr. Heath Huxtable of Braintree. Heath, firstly, thank you for joining us. Secondly, glad to have you here. And thirdly, I'm really glad to have you in an interview where I'm not seated at my car.
That's true, Asael.
So the last time we spoke on an actual official interview was my job interview for Vox, which, as I recall, you missed. And as you painfully remind me, I was in my car.
Exactly. And very surprised at how well you managed to multitask. Huh?
No, the best part of that interview.
Hey, you still got the job.
The best part of that interview, Heath, was so you guys missed my first interview, and we had to reschedule. And when the notification came for my second interview that the meeting has begun, I was driving somewhere, and I had to pull over really quickly. And when I pulled over, I hit my tire on the curb. So as I sat in the parking, speaking to you guys through a job interview, I could hear the air deflating from my tire. And I had to just hold it together, get through the interview, go out and check my puncture, and then curse at someone. But it wasn't you. So
but it's a small price to pay for a great job, hey, Sam.
Yeah, it's cool. One day I'll just send you the invoice for the tire. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Before we get too much into it, let's talk about you. Just introduce yourself, a bit about your background, where you come from, that sort of thing, just so our listeners can get an idea of who speaking to.
All right. So I think primarily, if you want to put me into a box, I'd put me down as an entrepreneurial spirit. So for me, building businesses, building things actually generally is my passion. So whether it's houses, remodeling houses, repairing old vehicles, to building Microsoft practices. I think that's kind of that's my passion. It's like I like to start things at ground zero and kind of see the fruits of I suppose it's not necessarily creative. It's creativity, inventiveness, it's hard work. But it's just surrounding yourself by people that are super good at what they do and kind of fulfill your dreams. And that's really what I do.
I mean, one of those is not like the other. Tell me a bit about Braintree and Microsoft and how that came around.
So that is it's been in the making for many years. Started the business probably late 90s, before the kind of Y2K bubble kind of problem. I the single investor in the business, you suddenly realize that a large portion of these organizations require fairly significant investment, if you want to kind of achieve your goals. I have sold the business and bought the business back twice. And in both instances, it was really about around the wrong partner. It's just like, choosing the wrong partner that you kind of sell your business to. And you get to see, every one of those deals there's a prerequisite that you kind of stay involved and kind of, help nurture and grow that business, under that new umbrella. And I think, the history of kind of where I've had is I've had two partners, two business associations that just didn't gel with kind of where I wanted to see the business going. The last time I bought the business back was 2008, and I traded it for about 7 years, and then approached Vox Telecom, who was actually a customer of mine and had been an early customer. I mean, they've been a customer of mine for since the probably mid 90s. I approached them with a view to doing a joint venture with them. And they're also an organization that's hugely entrepreneurial. They've got a lot of clout in the market, but I like the concept of the agility that they kind of brought, in the conversation. And that was kind of, what I felt was missing in, the two deals prior. But when I started negotiating with them, they came up with the principle that they don't really do joint ventures; they do outright acquisitions. But they give you, there's a potential upside to the transaction, and there's a number of guarantees that you have to put in place to kind of make sure that you can achieve that. But one of the reasons why I chose Vox was, one, I trusted them as a customer of mine. And as I said, they've been with me for many, many years. And two is that at the time that we were doing this discussion, it was 2013, 2014. I'd realized at that point that cloud computing was going to be the be all and end all of everything. And historically, everything we had done up until that point in time was really around on-prem deployments. So it was, an organization that had their own IT department, had their own infrastructure, they had their own, they cable up their buildings. They would, make sure that they had their server room was set up correctly. Licensing was obviously all, once-off licensing. So there's very little about subscription licensing. The shift, we started feeling the shift, from about 2012, 2013. And by the time I got to having a discussion with Vox, the principle, the major, the carrot for me, or, the opportunity for me was their data center. And, this was long before, public cloud had been around, but it hadn't really taken off, and certainly not in South Africa. A lot of organizations were doing private cloud. Vox, of course, had their data center quite well entrenched, and it was operating fairly effectively. And I really I saw us kind of leveraging the data center technology, the data center stack that Vox was offering. That to me was like the catalyst for the discussion. We concluded the transactions late 2014. The deal there was really around, it was an outright acquisition. So I'd lost my ownership of the business, but I gained so much more in terms of being able to kind of drive the business in an area that I was never really able to do. And part of that was actually around some acquisitions. So we started with two big acquisitions, which basically increased the size of the business twofold. And that was hugely beneficial for us. I mean, because it then gave us a bit of presence. We now had a national presence. So whereas historically I was always Cape Town based. It now made sure that we had a presence in Johannesburg. We had some sort of presence in Durban, but it just it elevated our status in the Microsoft partner ecosystem, and that to me was also, it was hugely beneficial. Because organizations want to deal with companies want to deal with organizations that are perceived to be successful. And have a good standing in the environment or in the network, and also have the backing of a fairly large organization. So we were never really able to kind of deal with fairly large implementations. I mean, I think in the early years, I think probably my biggest deal was probably about a 6 million rand deal, and that was a one-off deal. Today, that almost pales into insignificance in terms of kind of the deals that we're actually achieving today. And that's based on the backing that we're able to provide, one from our shareholder, and two from the fact that we've grown the business from what was essentially a 10-man operation to where we are today, which is a 110-man operation. Our revenues have gone from 10 million operation in 2014 to we're probably going to close out our end of financial year at about 250 million rand. So none of that would have been achievable in my own right. And you realize that at the very early stage, unless you've kind of got a significant investment, but that investment comes at price. It comes at a price, and the price for me was lose the ownership of the business, but ultimately gain so much more in terms of my ability to be able to kind of take my dreams going forward, and that's really what Vox has enabled me to do.
It sounds a lot like Steve Jobs and his journey with Apple, especially with.
If only I was like that super successful, hey?
I mean, he was a bit socially awkward, so there was a trade-off. I think you got the benefit. So my question, based on everything you're saying, is obviously when you say that Vox was one of your first clients, I assume that when they were your first client, they weren't even known as Vox.
They weren't, Tim. They were a lease. They used to do a lease cost operator. So, and it was operating through a company called Orion Telecom at the time. In fact, I actually had it. I was actually part of their business before they became Orion Telecom. They were actually called Ursus Telecom. And Ursus Telecom got bought out or merged into Orion Telecom. Orion Telecom became part of the DataPro group, and it is where it is today.
So, how big a role do you feel that Braintree had in the growth of Vox? Was it concurrent? Was it a happy coincidence? Or
I remember when so I was intricately involved in the implementation of the solution when Vox got into cellular billing. And I remember sitting there in the evening that we did the first bull run. And you could just see the excitement of this was a completely new kind of field of business field and line of business that Orion Telecom was getting into at that point in time. And it was the requirements that we had to do to be able to that was given to us to kind of deliver information to businesses that were going to be consuming those services was fairly significant, and we were party to that. We were instrumental in that. I'd like to think, and Vox Telecom or Orion Telecom, is one example. But we have multiple companies that we've been involved in where we'd start up 4, 5, 6-man operation, and today they are multi-million rand operations employing hundreds of people. All of that, or none of that, is really possible without an element of structure. It's the structure that we as an organization, as a Microsoft partner, kind of give our customers. And it's statutory. I mean, obviously, a large portion of it is a statutory requirement, but to a large extent, it's also about the value of information, is being able to kind of make sure that owners of businesses and as I say, I mean, a large portion of the organizations that we used to deal with were owner-managed businesses. We've now got into the corporate space, or since the Vox acquisition, we've got into the corporate space where we have less. We still do have owner-managed businesses, but we're probably the blend of corporate or publicly owned organizations, compared with the owner-managed business, is probably a 50-50 split. But we're instrumental in kind of making sure that every single one of those organizations grow. I'd love to be able to kind of put a metric to it and say, there's a number associated with how much we've actually been able to help an organization grow. Difficult, but we know that organizations would not be able to achieve what they've been able to achieve without the input of us, the input from us, and I think that's really, really critical. And from the consultants that do the work, do the implementations, and our architects that help architect the solution, the project managers that help make sure that every single project that we do is implemented successfully. We haven't had failed projects. We work on a principle that if we start a project, we finish a project, and in many cases we will have not many cases. There are a few cases where we have underscoped the project. And we don't walk away from that. We stick to our guns. Our credibility in the marketplace is far more important for us than losing money on a particular deal because we maybe potentially didn't scope it correctly. But yeah, I mean, as I say, I'd love to know what that number is. But we've definitely made some inroads in terms of being able to make organizations more efficient.
I think sometimes it's hard to quantify intangibles. I mean, there's obviously certain metrics that you can use, but there's other elements, like you said, that you just can't put a price or a figure on in terms of growth, in terms of support, in terms of knowledge, in terms of expertise. And I mean, you guys have over 25 years experience. I suppose that itself is something you can't really measure with numbers or statistics or facts.
And I suppose, sorry to interrupt. I mean, a big thing there as well is, how many of those customers that we've had, from day one, okay, do we still have? And the only time we've actually really lost a customer is when the customer's either been acquired by another organization, or where there's been a change in the technology requirement of that organization. We just don't lose customers, and I think that's a testament to the credibility we have as an organization, as a Microsoft partner.
I mean, that's testament. That it itself should be testament. There was a movie I was watching the other day where someone said to a client, "Don't judge me by my successes, judge me by my failures, because I have so few." And I feel like that'll ring true with Braintree as a whole. So my next question then is, if I'm a small business owner or a medium business owner, or even a large business owner listening to this, I've never heard of Braintree, but my ears are perking up. I'm hearing about levels of success, etc., etc. I know it's a large umbrella question to ask, but how exactly what exactly do you guys do? How exactly can you guys get involved? What needs can you fulfill in terms of my small, medium, or large business?
So again, Sahil, is that it's really around, it's a technology stack. So we are a Microsoft partner through and through. So we do not dabble in other tech. We will compete against the likes of Sage. We compete against SAP. We compete against Oracle when we get into the big organizations. We're not particularly in the space to compete against an organization that runs Pastel, as an example. But that said, is that an organization that runs Pastel, if they're super entrepreneurial, they will outgrow Pastel pretty quickly, and that's where we're able to kind of take an organization to the next level. So our business is really centered around three broad, let's call it, cloud technologies. Okay. And at the base is the public cloud. It's Azure. So there we will compete against, probably our single biggest competitor there in the public space would definitely be AWS. But we compete against private data centers as well. We compete against Vox and their private data center. It's about offering customer choice, really. So we don't force an organization into a particular technology stack. We actually listen to what they need, and we build solutions based on their need, based on their requirements. And there are many cases. I mean, we're actually doing an implementation now for an organization that does a lot of HR solutions. And we're going to do a hybrid cloud implementation for them, which basically means part of that's going to be in the data center and part of it's going to be in Azure. Which parts are where is solely dependent on the architecture of the solution that we provide. So at the basis is the cloud technology, or the data center technology. And the data center, remember, comprises a number of different services, whether it be SQL Server, as a platform, whether it be infrastructure as a service, with remote desktop services and application servers and file servers, and also all that sort of thing. That's the infrastructure layer. And then, as I say, you get the platform as a service, which is, again, I mean, our probably our single biggest claim to fame is actually around SQL servers, being able to take organizations that were historically on in a server room, where there was a SQL server in a server room. We're kind of migrating those servers when the time is right, and it makes commercial sense to get you out of your annual committed SQL Server licensing that you have to kind of update every 2 or 3 years. the hardware that you have to replace every 3, 4, 5 years, depending on the hardware replacement cycle, and get that into the public cloud with SQL as a service. And where comparatively your cost per transaction is significantly lower than you kind of supporting that yourself. So we're doing that. So as I said, so that's Azure. At a business application layer is we've got every single organization requires a business application to be able to operate, or traditionally that's classified as an ERP or a CRM solution. That's ostensibly it's still the same sort of thing, but what we're doing is Microsoft and through their technology platforms have been able to kind of make that as a software as a service offering. So instead of now going in again, spending millions of rands on infrastructure to kind of make these software solutions work on an on-prem environment, you basically offload that entire responsibility to a public cloud operator like Microsoft and Azure. And again, there you have a variable cost. So you've got your cost per there's a cost per user. There's a consumption value associated with that as well. But the more you use, the more you pay, which kind of makes sense because you're going to do that anyway if you are providing that infrastructure in your own data center or your own server room as well. And the beauty of it is that traditionally what you do if you're going to go and provide infrastructure in your server room is that you always kind of look at your peak. You always kind of provision for your peak. With cloud providers, you don't have to provision a peak. You provision for your immediate need, and because you have this elasticity of this built-in elasticity, as your demand increases, the infrastructure kind of adapts to that. Yes, you pay more, but you only pay for the service you consume, as opposed to going and spending huge sums of money on that investment up front on the off chance that you're going to reach a peak. The business application layer is significantly important for us, and it probably comprises about 60% of our total business right now. It's really centered around the dynamic suite of products. So you have Azure, you have the business applications, which Microsoft launches around their Dynamics business applications, and there's two real cloud-ready products that they have launched. That there's Finance and Operations, which is for corporate and enterprise size organizations, and then in the mid-market there's a product called Business Central. We implement and support both those. So we actually have two different teams. It's the project demand is so different between dealing with a corporate versus dealing with an owner managed organization in the mid-market. We tailor how we engage with an organization based on the demands of that particular organization, and then the software solution is also tailored to that specific customer's requirements. That said, is that we're probably one of the largest Dynamics partners in South Africa by a total number of customers, and a large portion of our customer base is currently still using legacy or traditionally non-cloud ready ERP and CRM solutions. Our objective over the next couple 2 to 3 to 4 years is to be able to help those organizations adopt a cloud strategy and move those legacy or non-cloud ready business applications off their server infrastructure in their server room into a public cloud or hybrid cloud or multi-cloud type of environment. And then the third part of what we do is around productivity. Most people would understand the concept of Office 365 and Microsoft 365, which obviously includes all the security features that are embedded, plus the operating system that we tend to run our applications on. We started out 2016, I think it was 2016 with Office 365 at a zero base, and today, between Office 365 and Azure, it comprises the other 40-45% of our business. It's really around being able to kind of make sure that organizations operate as effectively as possible. And we learned that with COVID. Look how many people suddenly had to work from home, and how do you operate from home? Whether you use Teams, we built tools to kind of make sure that people kind of recorded what their health status was, how they felt, just general productivity, and that was kind of what we built, as I say, from 2016 onwards. And as I say, it's a big portion of our growth strategy. Is to be able to kind of continue building on the modern desktop or modern workplace environment. And for us, I think it's a differentiator for us to be able to kind of offer the three cloud solutions that Microsoft have been: Azure, Business Applications, and the modern desktop. We do that with almost every single one of our organizations that we deal with. You think about it. An organization that goes and implements a business solution or business application, they spend vast sums of money on the implementation. The value of that implementation is actually in the data that is stored and mined over a period of time. What we do with one of the business applications, one of the applications that come out of that modern desktop is an application called Power BI. And for us to be able to surface information that currently resides in their business application is critical. Gone are the days of being able to kind of sift through millions of reams of paper. What you want to be able to do is manage by exception, is give reliable, accurate information that's on time and timely. So you don't look at data that's already a week or 2 weeks old. It's real-time information that you're looking at, and that's the value of what we do. Is that you asked me a little earlier on, can we classify ourselves being instrumental in the growth of our customers? I think the value of information we provide our customers enables them to grow significantly, and that's really the difference. You there?
Look, definitely a lot to process, and it's interesting to see your growth, especially when you factor in COVID and the way the world has shifted. And I can only imagine the way both the corporate and the customer space has evolved since you started the foundation to where we sit in 2022. You did touch on it briefly. Can we just scale back 2 years to COVID? What did you see? What did you notice? I know that most brands must have been like, ugh, what's happening? But I mean, in the digital sphere, we kind of had an advantage with the way the world shifted. How big did that, how largely did that impact Braintree, the way you guys operate, and how you guys operate today?
So you're talking about us as an organization or the service we provide the customer? Both. So us as an organization, it shifted the way we worked tremendously. So we have today we've adopted a remote work environment entirely. So we're actually going to be exiting out of our physical offices at the end of November, and we're going to be working on a complete remote basis. There's obviously still a requirement for some get together, and we're working on ways in which we can kind of foster team spirit, collaboration. Because one thing that I don't want to lose touch with is that human element. We're a business that is principally centered around people, and for us, we don't want to lose that. So we're trying to find that balance, and I think there's lots to learn still in terms of kind of what that balance looks like. We're probably going to scale down the offices to some degree, basically just for a marketing or meeting presence kind of capacity. I think organizations and companies and customers, especially when you want to maybe do a presentation, and people still do like to have presentations in person, still want to be able to kind of meet somewhere. And I think that's what we're probably going to end up doing in our next calendar year. But the way in which we worked, part of what a big portion of what we do today in the mid-market space is actually around retail. We've been super successful in terms of being able to implement solutions throughout Africa. So, I mean, we've done 2 remote implementations in Zimbabwe. We're about to do one in Nigeria. We're potentially going to be doing one in Botswana as well. Every single one of those implementations is going to be absolutely remote. We're not going to set foot in the country. That includes setting up the point of sale solutions, the devices that actually sit in the stores. We've learned how to do that remotely. There's a massive cost saving involved in that, that we can pass on to the customer for that. That said, I still think that there's an element that we could probably still do a little bit better, and that's really around, you tend to miss the nuances in a digital meeting versus sitting across the table from somebody that is that you can read the body language, so you can extract better when you can see somebody and feel somebody, feel what that person's really saying. But that said, the fact that we've done these implementations successfully kind of shows that it can be done. And we have done it, and we're in the process now in our enterprise business of doing a 12-country deployment of a replacement of an organization's entire business application suite. We've recently just gone live with Eswatini and Botswana. We're about to go live with Nigeria, Ghana, and Malawi, and then we're going to be doing another 7 deployments between November and April next year. And every single one of those is going to be remote, except to the point that the go live date. And the go live date is always kind of a bit of a critical point when applications either get adopted or they fail dismally. And because there's a big investment in this process, what we are going to be doing for the first time since COVID is we actually going to be sending our consultants in country and spending 2 weeks with the organization just to help them with the go live process. Basically, just to have somebody there to handhold and ask questions without having to kind of schedule a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting. So that's going to be quite interesting for us. And as I said, that is, in fact, they're actually left today. Today was the day that they're actually even going to go up into Africa.
Amazing, like absolutely amazing. I mean, it's actually a testament to the dexterity of Braintree as a whole, where a pandemic was supposed to be something that shut down organizations, and you guys turned it into a platform for growth.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, kudos to you guys.
And I think in numerical terms, we've seen our largest growth during the COVID period, more growth in the 2 years during COVID than we have in the 4 or 5 years prior to that.
And like I said, it's testament to your guys' ability to adapt to situations. Heath, we have time for one more question, and I think it's the most important question. So Richard, Craig, and Barry all set the bar pretty high when it came to their assessments. And I understand, yes, based on my understanding, that you're going to be able to top them all. Talk us through the Braintree assessments, and let's see what you guys are bringing to the table.
So I think the big thing for us in the assessments is actually really around the concept that most people don't know what they don't know. What we realized, and I think you started that discussion a little early on by saying, we deal with organizations from, small organizations right the way up into the enterprise. In the enterprise, you've got organizations that have a team an on-site team of engineers and IT professionals that kind of make sure that organization runs day in, day out. As you go down as the organization gets smaller, you find less and less of those people in the teams that are able to kind of do what we would almost assume as being standard capability in the organization, and that is really around things like security. It's around it's about securing your data, optimizing the way in which you work. And a large portion of our assessments is actually around being able to to audit the environment, audit the customer's environment. Because we are Microsoft centric, we will always tend to go and look for a solution based on a Microsoft technology stack. Okay. That said, is that, as I said to you, there's an organization that we're dealing with Fox now, where we're working in combination with them, where we're doing a hybrid cloud deployment, because potentially there's better value by being able to do that than just sticking with a single provider. But for us, the assessments is about unlocking value. It's about understanding what the requirement of the business is. And in most cases, most organizations don't even really know that. They can't really quantify it. They think they know what they need. But when push comes to shove and you actually have to put it down to a piece of paper and you have to get somebody to actually implement it, it becomes a bit difficult. So a large portion of what we do is actually sponsored by Microsoft. We get a lot of input from Microsoft and the technical elements from Microsoft, the value that we provide back into the organization is being able to kind of tell them what the organization needs to be able to make sure that they're a world-class business. So I think the thing is again, just to kind of reiterate, is about being able to unlock value in organizations. So as I say, most organizations don't really know what they don't know. We're adopting a technology that is world-class, and what you really want to do is kind of unlock the value of the world-class tech, and be able to consume that. You're paying for it, so consume it, and make sure that you deliver an organization that can kind of take you to the next level, make you help the organization grow to the next level and grow securely to the next level. And that ostensibly what our assessments do is about understand what the environment looks like, is understand what the requirements of the organization are, because as I said, the requirements may differ from organization to organization, and then to be able to direct consultants, direct activity. So it's how much of the change that needs to be implemented can be done by the organization themselves, because there's a large portion of that can be done themselves, versus how much of that do you outsource to an organization like Braintree to be able to help you kind of implement those changes. And what's really nice about the output of what we do is that there's an automated process that kind of gives you a scoring, a CSAT score, and through all the various iterations of the project that we implement, we can actually have a look and see how our score actually increases. And obviously, what you want to do is you want to kind of make sure you get the top mark, in the scoring process. It's expensive to kind of achieve that. But what you want to do is you also want to be able to have a conversation with an organization like Braintree to decide what is critically important and what don't you need. What can you do away with, but still be able to achieve the corporate governance that you require as an organization.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the range of services you guys offer in terms of assessment, it's everything from Microsoft 365 to Azure Cloud, to Teams, to CSAT, to SQL. How do you guys navigate and manage it? I mean, is there a team behind it of experts, or is it just a lot of pressure under a few people?
No. So we do have a team of people, and we also, as I said to you, the starting process is that we involve Microsoft in the process from the outset. So if an organization subscribes to that kind of level of interaction with us, we are very happy to bring Microsoft in into the assessments with us. The value that they provide for us as a perceived independent organization is immense. They direct us in terms of a large portion of what they prescribe, and for us, it's a win-win. We're able to assist the organization being able to achieve certain objectives, and the customer gets best of breed. I mean, to be able to have an organization like Microsoft assist you in a large portion of this it's phenomenal. And a big portion of that actually sale comes down to the fact that we work very, very closely with Microsoft in a lot of these assessments. We actually drive a large portion of the upfronts, the sales process, identifying who the customers are, is actually identify the customers. Is we confirm that the customer is actually one that actually wants to go down this path with us. And then, if the customer is open to the opportunity, is that we will then include Microsoft as part of that engagement. But to a large extent, it's actually we provide those resources ourselves.
I am a customer, and everything you said is resonating with me. I'm ready to take the next step. Where do I start? Talk me through the process, and how do I get the ball rolling?
Most importantly is reach out to so if you're an existing customer of either Vox or ourselves, if it's Vox, is reach out to your account manager. If not, if you're a brand new customer to the group, is reach out to sales@braintree.co.za, and we'll start the engagement process with you very, very soon.
It's that simple.
It's that simple.
So it's like one small step for business, one giant leap for your future, basically.
Absolutely.
Heath, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm pretty sure we can speak for another hour. But I think let's wrap it up. Any final words of advice to our listeners? Any golden nuggets of information? Or leave us on?
I think the big thing, Sahil, and this comes back down to where we've come past in the last 2 years is to embrace the tech. Is a large portion of organizations are really, really reluctant to kind of embrace the tech. There's a propensity to kind of start moving into cloud-ready applications and cloud technology. But there is still a lot of apprehension around being able to do that, because I think people feel that they need to kind of see and feel their tech. What we've learned over the last 2, 3 years is that there's a big cost associated with that, and a big portion of that is actually loss of opportunity. When you kind of offload that responsibility and that workload to an organization that does this day in, day out, being ourselves and Microsoft, you can focus on the things that make more money for you. And so instead of worrying about the tech, you can worry about the sales. That for us is critical. It actually gets you, as an entrepreneurial organization ourselves. We want to focus on sales. We want to focus on making sure that we can actually grow our business. The tech needs to just work. My last, I suppose, final point is embrace the technology, embrace the change. And I think organizations will find that 6-7 months into the project, they'll suddenly realize why did it take them this long to kind of get this far?
Heath, obviously I work for Vox, so I don't have a business, but speaking to you for 40 minutes has made me want to start a business just to see what Braintree can do for us. So
absolutely.
If I ever get to that point, I'm definitely going to hit you up. But until then, I'm just going to hit you up for my next edition of the podcast, whenever you're
Fantastic, Sal. Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for your time. And to all our listeners, this has been the final episode of our cybersecurity podcast. But we will be back, and we'll definitely have Heath back on the show. So, you know the drill. Follow us on social media. Keep your eyes and ears peeled. And until then, stay cyber safe and cyber smart. And we're out.